Is HYBE really deliberately separating Taehyung and Jungkook in order to maintain the group's image in the public eye? Who has been hiding the truth all this time? Click through, read to the end, and don't forget to leave your opinion, because this story could change the way Stay and ARMY look at the K-pop industry forever. Why is it that Taehyung and Jungkook, who once looked like inseparable brothers, are now rarely seen together, even backstage? Why did the two look awkward on the show that used to be their home together? Why did such a warm and sincere interaction suddenly turn into a stiff smile and a blank look? Is this just an ordinary phase in the relationship between group members? Or is there something much bigger being hidden? This question began to shake fans' hearts as snippets of video, off-cam footage, and small interactions began to be arranged into a pattern that was too obvious to ignore. Facts that were once only whispered in closed forums are now slowly flooding social media. And even more surprisingly, all fingers are now starting to point to one central point. HYBE Corporation.it all started with something that seemed very trivial, an empty chair in the middle of the group's latest promotional photo formation. Fans noticed that Taehyung and Jungkook, who used to be almost always side by side, are now rarely seen in close-ups. Some thought this was just a coincidence. But can everything be called a coincidence when it happens repeatedly for more than 2 years? A behind-the-scenes video that went viral showed staff directing Taehyung to stand on the far left, while Jungkook was asked to go to the far right. As the two looked at each other and threw a faint smile at each other, the camera had time to capture the meaningful gaze of the two of them. But even more disturbing was the sound of the crew whispering, "Don't put them too close. Orders from above." That sentence, while almost drowned out in the crowd, has now been replayed millions of times by fans, becoming the subject of in-depth analysis. One thing that hurts is that all this is happening in the absence of any official explanation. There was no statement from HYBE's side. No confirmation, no refutation. It's as if they choose to let the public make their own conclusions. Then, a mysterious message appeared in the international fan community. A former production crew claimed that during the last world tour, he witnessed with his own eyes how the staff were systematically asked to separate the two idols. In a statement, the whistleblower said that HYBE felt the dynamic between the two was too strong and feared it would shift the focus away from the brand they had built. Some executives consider their closeness to create a narrative that does not fit with the target corporate image, he wrote. They want to keep all members looking neutral, not too close, not too far away. But Taehyung and Jungkook are too real, too honest, and it threatens illusions that have been designed for years. This statement shook, not only because of his courage, but because many pieces of fact that had previously felt like a puzzle now feel plausible. If so, does this mean that HYBE deliberately separated two close friends for the sake of a business agenda? Is what is seen on the screen all this time just the result of careful manipulation and editing? An old interview that had gone unnoticed went viral again. In that session, Taehyung once said, "Sometimes, we have to refrain from showing too much of what we really feel. The camera can change everything." At that time, his sentence was considered a general afterthought. But now, in the latest context, its meaning feels much deeper and more terrible. Jungkook himself had mentioned in the live broadcast session, "I miss some things that used to feel simple." He then paused for a while before saying, "But maybe now is not the right time." Are those simple things little moments with Taehyung? Is the time in question an unwritten prohibition coming from above? Some fans even found the scheduling pattern very striking. In their respective solo projects, Taehyung and Jungkook are almost never given space in the same week. Even as the promotion of Taehyung's solo album was underway, all of Jungkook's media activity seemed very limited. And vice versa. It's as if they were guarded against ever sharing the stage in full again, said a fan who has been making graph analyses of their activities since 2021. Even more suspicious. One of the radio interviews was suddenly canceled when the two idols were scheduled to attend together. The organizers did not give a reason. But later, the host of the event made a cryptic statement on social media. "Some of our guests were canceled for non-technical reasons. Sorry for all that awaits their chemistry." Internal sources say the separation is part of a larger international image strategy. They want each member to be independent. And in terms of Taehyung and Jungkook, there's too much fanshipping, too much speculation, too much potential risk for the more conservative overseas markets, said the source, who asked to remain anonymous. Of course, this immediately provoked an explosion of indignation from the fans. You can curb your marketing strategy, but don't separate genuine friendships, wrote one viral comment on X. We love them for their authenticity, not because they are forced to be robots. This issue touches not only professional, but also emotional aspects. Many fans who have followed Taehyung and Jungkook's journey since trainee days have called this separation a betrayal of the collective memory of the fandom. When I'm sad, I rewatch old videos of them laughing together. Now, every clip feels like a wound, wrote one stay on the discussion forum. Why do companies break the most sincere ropes just for fear of public opinion? What makes it all the more painful is that behind all this, it seems that Taehyung and Jungkook have no choice. In every public interaction, they still show professionalism. They keep smiling, they keep singing, they keep performing, even though the look in their eyes sometimes seems quieter than usual. The highlight came when one of the fans uploaded a video that managed to capture a rare moment: Taehyung and Jungkook passing each other backstage, staring at each other in silence, and one sentence that was caught softly: "I hope someday we can talk freely again." Now, the spotlight is back on HYBE. Can they answer this suspicion? Or will they remain silent, as usual? What exactly are they protecting? Is it for the sake of image? Or are there invisible contracts and agreements that curb the freedom of the members? And when trust has been shaken, no amount of marketing strategy can repair the sense of loss in fans' hearts, because it's more than just music and the stage. The relationship between Taehyung and Jungkook is a symbol of the authenticity longed for in an all-made-up industry. We are all looking forward not just clarification, but also the courage to admit that behind the sparkling stage, there is a feeling of being sacrificed. There are friendships that are undermined by policy. And there are two hearts that want to be close to each other, but are separated by an invisible hand. If you've ever been touched by their closeness, share this article, leave your comments, and turn on the notification bell. Let's show that fans are not just statistical numbers. We see, we feel, and we resist silence. Do you believe that Taehyung and Jungkook were deliberately separated? ChatGPT. And this is where everything becomes more and more difficult to argue with. When an entertainment industry that is supposed to sell honesty and emotional connection is suspected of manipulating the genuine relationship of two friends for the benefit of branding, the question becomes sharper. What is the price of friendship sacrificed for the sake of image? Another anonymous source referred to as a former part of HYBE's international strategy team gave a much more controversial statement. He said that since 2021, there has been an internal document titled Directional Pairing and Market Perception Risk, a systematic plan that classifies relationships between members based on the level of fanfiction risk and excessive shipping. In the document, it is reported that Taehyung and Jungkook belong to the red tier, that is, couples who must keep their distance in order to avoid public perceptions that deviate from conservative masculinity standards in target markets such as the United States, Japan, and the Middle East. What is even more surprising is that the content of the document not only talks about marketing, but also regulates the schedule of interaction, restrictions on joint training sessions, even restrictions on taking personal photos. This is characterized by the internal term content quarantine, restrictions on the visualization of interactions that are considered excessive by the content planning team. Imagine two humans who grew up together, went through hard training during the trainee period, laughed together behind the stage, now have to keep their distance from each other just because market analysis considers their proximity could threaten income stability. Is this the entertainment industry or a cold-blooded chess game that plays on emotions as pawns? A former trainee who had trained under Big Hit in the early days of BTS emergence even revealed that from the beginning, Taehyung and Jungkook had an emotional connection that couldn't be engineered. They take care of each other, encourage each other, and even in times of frustration when no one is sure if their group is going to succeed, the two remain a place to lean on each other. If you've ever seen the way they look at each other when there's no camera, you'll know it's not just a friendship on paper. It is an honest bond, he said softly. However, according to him, after the influx of large investors and the merger of HYBE with various other labels, the internal dynamics of the group changed. Personal decisions are taken by the strategy division. Even his solo album was delayed due to considerations of market conflict with other members' solo releases. What if it happened to Taehyung and Jungkook? Are their solo projects really purely individual initiatives? Or is it part of a grand strategy to weaken their linkages in the public eye? Furthermore, the issue began to develop that some international sponsors had put indirect pressure on HYBE. One of the multinational companies affiliated with the BTS brand is said to have rejected a campaign that showed Taehyung and Jungkook in an interactive frame for fear of public perception that could lead to unwanted speculation. If so, HYBE not only submits to the power of money, but also becomes part of a system that normalizes the separation of people based on assumptions and prejudices. And the most painful thing is, when two best friends are forced to be silent, unable to make a voice. Because of the contract and the clauses that curb their words, Jungkook, who is known to be spontaneous, now seems more careful in his words. Taehyung, who used to post meaningful photos, now uploads blank landscapes or abstract artwork more often, as if he were speaking through symbols instead of words. A post that went viral showed Taehyung sitting alone, looking at the sea, with the caption, "The harder the wind tries to separate, the stronger the roots hidden underground." A simple sentence, but the fans know it's not a coincidence. While Jungkook, in a live broadcast held at midnight, had said, "I want to say something, but I can't yet. One day, you'll understand everything." And then he played a song whose title was quite painful to hear then, "Lost Without You." Is this just a fan interpretation? Or fragments of voiceless shouting messages from two people who have lost their freedom to be friendly? In the midst of all this, HYBE remains silent. They continue to produce content, release merchandise, hold events, set schedules. But I have never had any clarification on this issue. There is no statement that says "not true," no defense against their members. As if silence is the safest way to protect their narrative and their income. But what they forget is, fans are not little kids who are easily distracted by funny TikTok videos or the latest dance practice releases. They are human beings with taste, with empathy, and with a long memory of sincere relationships. If it is true that Taehyung and Jungkook have been sacrificed in silence, then this is not just a business strategy. This is an emotional betrayal, and at a time when fans are starting to feel betrayed, no amount of imaging or expensive solo projects can restore that trust. Now the fans are wondering, will there be a moment when the two speak openly? Will one day Taehyung and Jungkook appear on one broadcast and tell everything from their own hearts, unscripted, or will they continue to live in the shadow of a scenario that they did not write themselves? One thing is certain. The public will not be silent, because when the industry tries to silence the truth, the voice from the hearts of fans will be louder than anything. For those of you reading this, do you still believe that Taehyung and Jungkook just moved away because of busyness? Or are you beginning to see the reality that their friendship may be being controlled by invisible hands? ChatGPT, a reality that was never revealed to the public, began to feel like an open wound. And that wound continued to be left gaping by the party that was supposed to protect the artists. Not a few fans began to question, if the relationship between Taehyung and Jungkook is so strong, why should there be forces trying to damage it? And further, what is HYBE really afraid of? Some theories suggest that the HYBE were not simply afraid of excessive shipping, but that they were trying to silence a narrative they had no control over. Behind the scenes, an entertainment company as big as HYBE manages not only the schedule, performances, and music, but also the social relationships and even emotions of the artists. Fans are starting to realize that what seemed natural all along has actually gone through strategically approved filters, framing, and scenarios. And in this grand scenario, Taehyung and Jungkook's closeness is deemed too wild, too uncontrollable, too real. To make matters worse, allegations began circulating that some of HYBE's internal staff were actively spreading rumors in order to cloud public perception of Taehyung and Jungkook. One of the former editors of an internal promotional video leaked that there was footage that was deliberately not shown because it was considered too intimate for the public. In the video, he said, Taehyung appears to rest his head on Jungkook's shoulder as he quietly says, "Sometimes I want to run away from everything. But if you're here, I'm strong." A simple sentence, but enough to make the heart of the fans tremble. But the video was never released. Even more than that, all of his footage backups are deleted from official databases and sealed in archives that only certain executives have access to. Is this a protective measure? Or censorship of something too threatening to their own order? There are also reports that Taehyung once asked for a private room to speak privately with Jungkook after a rehearsal, but HYBE's staff refused on the grounds that it was not on schedule. Taehyung's request was repeated several times, and each time it was rejected. According to one of his vocal assistants, Taehyung shouted in the studio, "I can't even talk to my friends now." Am I just property here? The outrage was unheard of publicly. But after that day, Taehyung's social media activities suddenly stopped for almost 2 weeks. Some fans believe it was a form of